because I have something I need to ask you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Hey, everybody. Love you, sweetie.
Okay. So.
Okay. Bye bye.
I'm gonna bring the Reverend up.
Okay. Thank you. And I just sent you Dr. Knighton's number.
Okay, let me take it. Okay, so she's gonna be with Doctor for a hold now.
Yes, she will.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you so much.
And then the Reverend's up right now.
Okay. Reverend,
Hey, Santita.
how you doing?
I'm doing well today. How about you?
Oh, honey, have you seen all these breakout or outbreak infections?
I have seen that.
I mean, I was like, these folks looking at me like, I'm like, honey, we got some bigger problems here.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my
Just
gosh. I
having a
mean,
conversation yesterday.
so we're on Facebook Live, so we will talk a
All
little
right.
later.
Yes, ma'am.
Uh-huh. I think with they're not letting anybody know what's going on. It's just
Yeah.
I think that what they do is just it's terrible. I think what they're doing
They're
is
on one
terrible.
accord.
No, oh, I was telling a friend. I mean, because now the Bulls. I'm like, what am I looking for? The Bulls can't play.
Right, right.
I was because this is where I'm looking for these little scores.
Yes.
Okay. And, okay, Blackhawks can't play. Excuse me, I forgot about that. Okay. And if you notice, they have just, you know what, we'll just talk because they have just changed the definition of everything. And see, that's been part of the problem. People
Yes.
think they're, they really feel, oh, they really feel that they are absolutely protected from everything.
Yes, ma'am.
They really, really do. And it's like,
They
you're
really
not.
do.
You're not. And it's not their fault because they've changed the
Sure.
definition of what a vaccine is. And so people are not taking the precautions that
Yes.
they would take had it been explained to them,
1 minute.
Particular
Yes.
way. So,
A lot of people walk up to me at church on Sunday. Oh, Pastor, I got my booster. I can hug you. No, no, ma'am.
no, you cannot.
Stay away.
No.
Get back.
I mean, hold on. And it's like I love you, but you know what? You should make that part of your sermon. Honestly. Seriously. You should talk to
Right.
Shanina
Right.
and say, now, you know what? Let me tell y'all. Look at
30
our
seconds.
Bulls. Look at. Well, I don't need to tell you what to do, but I am furious. Furious. Sao Paulo are almost 100% vaccinated, and they're having massive outbreaks. I mean, come on. What is that?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Dawn from Waukegan. Oops, let me turn off my
10
phone,
seconds.
y'all. Ooh. Oh, man.
5 seconds.
Give my love to your parents, please.
I
Thank you,
promise I will.
Cosme. God bless us.
Can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. We are going to get caught up on the Jussie Smollett case, yes, because a lot of things happened in court that you need to know about, yes. And we're going to be talking about the Capitol riot. A lot of revelations came out. You saw that Fox News pundits and President Trump's son, a lot of people were very, very involved in trying to get President Trump to say something to stop the riot because they felt that things had gone too far. And that comes as Hillary Clinton is saying that, you know what, watch it, he's going to run in 2024. Do you think that all of these hearings are going to stop him from running? Do you think that this is going to make him more popular than ever before? I want to know what your thoughts are. 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. And then, of course, we're going to have John Nichols as we look at this continuously ballooning military budget as we're trying to build back better. And Build Back Better is being held up in the U.S. Senate by Mitch McConnell, whose state absolutely needs to be, the western part of the state needs to be rebuilt. Unbelievable. You cannot make this stuff up, y'all. You can't. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Took over the airwaves for Air America. And AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook, and meet everybody, Carolyn and Joyce and Carol, not me, and Louie Chewy and Joyce and Paula, my girls, all my folks. And Andre, my god brother. Everybody, please get on over to the YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show, if you can, if you have the ability to do that. And so let's get on with this show because we've got a lot to talk about today. 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. I hope that you will call me today. I love hearing your voices. I love not just seeing you in the chat line, but I love hearing your thoughts. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of, 50 degrees, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 38 degrees, partly cloudy. The Dow closed down 320 points. Yesterday, the NASDAQ closed down 217 points. The S&P 500 closed down 43 points. Well, no bulls last night because they are having to adhere to the COVID protocols. It turns out they couldn't field the team. Too many people either have COVID or have been exposed to it. And the same thing happened for us in hockey. That's right. The Chicago team also had to push back their matchup against the Flames due to COVID protocols. What are the COVID protocols? Somebody on the team or on the coaching staff, someone has COVID, and because of the exposure, they all have to they have to quarantine. Wow. So we're going to be talking with Dr. Deborah Verholden and Dr. Shanina Knighton about all of these outbreaks, because we're about to go into a Christmas season in which we're going to be very, very social. And I want to make sure that we really, really protect ourselves. Last night, though, we did have a football game. The Rams 30, the Cardinals 23, and tonight, COVID protocols willing, we're going to see the Hurricanes at the Wild. All right, everybody. A few of these headlines. The Capitol riot, Donald Trump Jr., Fox News personalities, and lawmakers unsuccessfully implored then White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, on January 6th to get then President Donald Trump, to stop the violence in the U.S. Capitol, according to text messages relayed by the House committees investigating the attack. And now they are going to press criminal contempt charges against Mark Meadows, who is a former member of the House of Representatives. Wow. The Omicron variant of coronavirus is spreading quickly in several countries, but we knew that it was highly transmissible. It's killed at least one person in the UK and put 10 people into the hospital, most of them vaccinated, according to authorities. China says it detected its second case of Omicron, and it's expected to become the dominant coronavirus variant in Denmark this week. And on it goes. We need to still see just how strong or mild it is. Wow. As we're looking at the process of finding people who are still unaccounted for throughout the 7 states where we have this once in a lifetime tornado, at least that's what we hope, we're finding out a lot of things about those workers who were at their work sites. There is a worker who allegedly texted, according to the screenshots, his girlfriend, Larry Verdon. He was one of 6 people who was killed Friday at the Amazon factory in downstate Illinois in Edwardsville. And he texted his girlfriend, get this, everybody, Amazon won't let us leave. Wow, these are horrifying details. Amazon will not let us leave. And he was killed in the tornado trying to save people, but they knew that the storm was coming. They're questioning the safety protocols at the Amazon facility in Edwardsville. They said they received virtually no emergency training. Why is that important? Because we are in Tornado Alley. We are in the part of the country that regularly gets tornadoes. If you've heard the sirens go off here in Chicago, they happen regularly. but they were not told how to protect themselves. The same thing happened at the candle factory. That's right. This catastrophic tornado at least 8 people died in the Mayfield Consumer Products Factory. Uh, they were told that if they left, they would lose their jobs. They wanted to get away, get to their families, and get to safety. No, they were told that if they left, they would lose their jobs. These are the employees at the Kentucky Candle Factory. 110 people employed. They found 40 people. They're still looking for 70 more who have died. You cannot make this stuff up. Pastor Stephen Thurston, teaching pastor at the Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope. Wow. It's amazing how callous people can be. It's amazing how callous
Yes.
people can be to think. And we're going to talk about this more extensively tomorrow, because as I follow the former labor secretary under the Clinton administration, Robert Reich, and he has a fantastic thread. And he was talking about Elon Musk and the Time Person of the Year. That's very problematic when you understand how he treats his workers. But it's also very problematic when you see, as Jeff Bezos is going to space. I said, while he's looking up at the sky, he needs to be looking up at the heavens and get right. Because his workers, yeah, I said it, his workers were told that they could not leave, and they died. This man texted his girlfriend, and he said, Amazon won't let us leave. I'm so furious about that, everybody. And I hope that you are too. Yeah, furious enough to do something about it. Oh, give me some good news. I need it.
Yes, man, for sure. But listen, the past 2 years have been a time of non-stop disruption, upending and destabilizing institutions that we often took for granted. And yet throughout history, cataclysmic events have often been followed by times of spiritual awakening. I really hope that's around the corner real soon. Because the reality is that when almost everything we rely upon has been ripped away, we have two choices. We can either fall into despair, hopelessness, and resignation, and all the paralysis and demoralization that comes with that, or we can dig deeper and find the truths and the values that ultimately sustain us. And the good news is that instead of agonizing and worrying, you can find an alternative that feeds your soul. Over this time period, many of us have started new hobbies and read new books and tried new activities. But many people, Santita, have grown deeper in our faith and our relationship with God. And in essence, we've asked and answered the question, what am I going to do to strengthen myself and others around me in this time period? And as we continue on this journey, this spiritual journey, this deepening of relationships with our divine creator, as well as others around us, here are 3 things I want us to continue. And for those who haven't tried them, to start. Number 1, I want you to bond and brainstorm. Focus on the people and the experiences that you love and connect with. Dedicate some extra time to speaking with family and friends and reinforce those bonds. Address fresh ideas. Initiate partnerships with people and brainstorm together. Number 2, detox from disagreements. Usually knowledge is power, but not if it just feeds our anxiety. If your media consumption leads you to feel frustrated, angry, worried, or disempowered, it's time to re-examine your habits and turn some stuff off for a little bit. We've got to lower the volume on all of this turbulence that's around us because it's just inundating us with all kinds of information and misinformation that doesn't necessarily help us. And so I want to challenge somebody today to avoid doom scrolling and partisan political sensationalism and conspiracy theories and platforms and websites that will aid in that. And by all means, avoid getting sucked into arguments and non-productive disagreements. Number 3, we've got to calm by connecting. I want you to go out of your way to develop some new friendships and connections, even with people that think different than you. Look and listen for opportunities to comfort other people and to share their burdens and to ultimately learn. I want us to ask people who've endured difficult trials in their life to share their experiences with us. and look for opportunities to serve other people and to build community around areas of common interest. Think of what we have been through as one frame of the film. Yes, it's been a disturbing frame, but it's not the end of the film, and that's the good news. It's not the end of the story. What will the next chapter be? I don't know. I'm not a prophet in that way. But what I can recommend is that we not just be reactive and feel like victims. We've got to take control of our destiny by asking this question. How would I like this disruption to turn into transition for myself and for my family? Remember now, while we have no control over the events that go on outside of ourselves, we do have full control over what's going on the inside of ourselves. And when we change what's within, we can ultimately change what's around.
Amen. I love that. I love that. My great grandmama Tibby used to say, as long as what happens to you, the tough things don't happen in
Yes,
you, you're going to be all right.
yes, that's it.
Boy, did that woman, she couldn't read or write, but she made sense. And I think about something she said to me every single day. She's with me every
Hmm.
single day. Every single day.
Yeah,
Every single day. Thank
yeah,
you for that.
that
Thank you
spirit
for that.
lives.
Yeah, I mean, because we needed that kind of advice as we're going into the new year. As
Yes.
we're getting out of this year, as we're going into the new year, because we're just in a time of tribulation, everybody, and we're just going to have to really buckle up and get ready for the ride because we're in the midst. We're in the midst. We're in the midst. I love you, Pastor. How can we get your book,
Love you
Mirror
too.
Moments?
You can head to my website, Stephen with a PH, jthurston.com. All of my content is right there.
Love it, love it, love it. Pastor Stephen Thurston. Well, you know what? We've got doctors Deborah Holden and Shanina Knighton with us. Of course, Dr. Deborah Holden, uh, our own personal epidemiologist. She is the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University School of Medicine. She brought in from Johns Hopkins. She's still there as well. And, of course, research clinical scholar from Case Western Reserve University, registered nurse, and infection preventionist. We need to be seeing much, much, much more of her. She was brought to us by Dr. Deborah Holden. She said there's some pieces we're missing here in this pandemic, and we're seeing it, Dr. Deb, as I have you and Dr. Knighton with us today. Um, we couldn't play the basketball game. The Chicago Bulls. They couldn't field the team. It had to be postponed because you have to have 9 people you can put on the floor. The Chicago Bulls didn't have 9 people, Dr. Deb. And then our Blackhawks. I mean, Stephen Thurston, Pastor Thurston, you can't make this stuff up. We could not even, was that India? We love you, baby. We couldn't even field our hockey team. Same thing. Before I get to Dr. Knighton, because you brought her here for such a time as this, Dr. Deb, what do you make of that?
I think we're going to see more and more of that.
Oh,
We're going to see more and more of it. This is a good foreshadowing for what we can expect to see in other franchises and in other places. It's just where we are.
okay. Dr. Knighton, I mean, because Dr. Verholden and Dr. Knighton, people are worried about their children playing sports, right? Because everything is resumed. Dr. Verholden, you continue to say we're still in a pandemic, but we're not behaving that
Yep.
way anymore. We're not, Dr.
Uh-huh.
Deb. It's like, okay, it's all over. I have been to so many places with people who are vaccinated and they are maskless. And if you wear a mask, they kind of give you the side eye. I mean, I don't even know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Knighton, you've got young kids who are also active in their school activities. Um, what do you make of the Chicago Bulls having to postpone their game? They couldn't field enough people to play a game, and then you've got the Chicago hockey team, same thing, professional hockey team. What about that?
I'm not surprised. It's actually crazy because I did some consultation work for some NCAA teams. I can tell you that those teams that I consulted for in regards to how they manage their practices, their screenings, not shaking hands and slapping hands, which is something that's still happening in the NBA. I can tell you that those NCAA teams had 0 COVID cases. And we are going into 2 years because they've been able to institute those protocols. But right now, what we're experiencing is, come on now, like we're still seeing that being given on the field. So anytime that you can still look up and you can say to yourself, hands are the number one way to transmit or prevent infections, then you would think to yourself that those protocols would change in regards to how we acknowledge others, not necessarily still doing high fives and fist bumps in the middle of a pandemic. The other thing is, too, is many people continue to forget that we asking people to be on an honor system, which has never been the case. You still got individuals that are sneeze and cough and tell you it ain't a sneeze or a cough. You got individuals that's walking around here, okay, like how we be talking about know your status. It's some people around here that super spreaders that they never went to go get tested a day in their life, ain't vaccinated, and don't give a care about who it is that they're spreading it to, but they're walking up into establishments. How many people think like, oh, well, I'm so lonely, I don't want to sit at home. So instead of me sitting at home or instead of me missing this good sports money, I'm just going to contaminate my team and I'm not going to get tested because ignorance is bliss. So we're seeing a lot of this happening. It's not just happening, in professional sports teams. My son, his school shut down because it just got out of control because everything was so contaminated, right? Our kids were so sick. But what I had to express was, and this is vaccinated, okay? So we're talking about vaccinated kids. But what I had to express and what I will continue to express, you can shut down for 2 days, 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 seconds, 2 years. It does not matter. If you have bad protocols within your facility and you do not establish a culture that embraces infection prevention, it's almost like literally you are doing it for no reason. You're wasting money. And if you want to waste money, just donate it because it's not going to matter that you're cleaning for a couple of days and then you're saying, oh, everyone can come back and everyone's going to wear their mask. And then literally you don't have protocols in place to make sure that people are staying safe. You don't have timeouts for sports teams to make sure that even though we know that there is sweat and droplets involved, that people will be wiping their faces and wiping their eyes and not sharing towels and not sharing the same things because you know that they are taking care of themselves and you know that others around them are making sure that they are clean. So that's not the case. The other piece of it is there is no control in regards to what is happening with these people socially. So the opposite is with some of these NCAA teams, because their teams were committed, they would say, hey, you all can't be going out to clubs and bars during this pandemic if you want to play for the team and keep your teammates safe. Can we say the same thing for a lot of these professional sports teams that's still making club appearances, right? And I continue to talk about the club appearances because we're not talking about how many people are screaming. The music is loud. You're screaming and stuff over tables. You're screaming and stuff over bars. And everybody is using those same services. You got the dang on waiter that's going to keep wiping down the same surfaces with the same rag, not paying attention to the fact that it's contaminated. Her rag is contaminated, but yet she's spreading germs opposed to preventing and just trying to wipe the surface. So some of us are just doing acts and not realizing what it is that we're doing. And unfortunately, those are going to be the behaviors that's not going to get us out of this pandemic.
Yeah, there's a question for you, Dr. Deborah Holden. I only have a couple of minutes left, but Philip Sharp has got something loaded. He says, he's asking, are the professional players being used as guinea pigs? Since 97% of players are vaccinated, will this be the best test for breakthrough cases because of travel, etc.?
Well, I don't think they're necessarily being used as guinea pigs because, people are being forced to do this. You ask any of the players, they want to play. This is their livelihood, their profession, their dreams fulfilled, right? So, I think everybody is just more than anything in a rush to kind of get back to normal. So I don't think we're using the players. I think, the game must go on. It doesn't have to, but that's how we're playing it. The game must go on. And so, I think what Dr. Knighton is pointing to is what do we need to do so that if the game must go on, it can go on as safe as possible. I'm with her. I am really shocked when I encounter new people that I don't know, and they stick their hand out. And I'm looking at their hand like, are you for serious? Like, do you really think I'm going to shake your hand?
And you know what I do? I cross my arms over my chest and I bow to people. And I say, God bless you. And
Yeah.
it throws people, but I mean, hey, you know what? I was talking to my mother yesterday, and she said, you used to wear, because she and I go back and forth a lot, but that's my mom. And she said, you used to wear, you used to wear not masks, you used to wear gloves. I said, but when I got more information, better information, I ditched the gloves. Girl, I bought so many gloves that, come on,
Yeah.
if somebody wants some plastic gloves, call me. I got a box. Yes, I did. Because Dr. Deb said last year, girl, you're just doing the most. You're being ridiculous. I said, I am doing everything. I'm
The
the girl in
5
the
mask
past
was too
plastic
much.
bubble. Come on, I'm John Travolta's girlfriend. How about that? Huh?
But I got a question. Did y'all ever not think like, did you think that really made sense? You know how you out at a networking event, right? And they want you to network and they got food and you meeting people. And y'all sitting up there, you eating something with your hands. So
Mm-mm.
you're eating some crackers and some cheese. And they literally want you to shake somebody's hands. Like,
Mm-mm.
I've never done that.
I've never
Like, I've
done that.
always been,
Mm-mm.
yeah, like, I elbow you and I'll clearly say, like, hey, we eating food. And I want my hands to shake your hands and everybody else's hands in this room while I'm also eating my food. So I'm just going to fist. Not only fist bump, we elbow bump. So
I'm an
that's
air
honestly how
kisser. I air kiss and air hug. Ooh, love you. That's what I do. Love you. Love you. Make a
yeah.
face.
So it's just because I don't want any problems whatsoever. So I was like, come on, we cool. Elbow bump.
I told
But
you,
no,
girl.
this is what we get.
I'm a legacy of my grandmother, Mrs. Gertrude Davis Brown, who felt that everybody was a walking germ. I've become that. Goodness gracious! But you know what? You just want to be careful because as Dr. Deborah Holden said, we're not out of the pandemic. As Dr. Knighton said, we're going to see more teams unable to play because we're not uh, we're not being careful. And you hear India? Let's everybody give India some love. She came with us this morning. Yay! Oh my goodness! And I told you to bring her because we want to know how she's doing. We want to hear that baby.
She's doing
Oh,
great. All smiles this morning. All smiles.
love it, love it.
Look,
We
Dr.
love her.
back out. Got her baby back.
All right, let's talk about Donald Trump. Do you think he's going to run for president again? I mean, a lot of stuff is coming out, and yet he's still holding on to his followers. What's up? Hillary Clinton says so. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Okay, now Hannah Parker from South Carolina says she gives everybody the head nod. Okay, not even the elbow bump. She's like, oh, love you. Mm.
Right? Right?
Oh, yeah, I'm Paula. I'm an air kisser. Love you. Plus, you know what? There was I used to find years ago, and this is women. Come on, ladies, we have to do better. People say, "Oh, your makeup's so nice," and there was one woman I knew who would always try and mess up my makeup. So she would kiss me and try to smear my lipstick straight across my face. Can you believe that?
Mm.
And oh, girl, please, it didn't matter. I got wise too, because now I have my war paint in my purse. I don't have a problem going to the restroom and taking my lipstick off and starting all over again. How about that? But it was just, I was like, come on, come on.
I
And
have
yes,
Attorney Patillo on the line.
thank you. And I do have masks that cup. I have these, the N95 masks that cup so they don't smear my lipstick. So I'm not looking like Baby Jane. I told you all about that. I can't stand that look where I'm looking crazy. Crazy. That's the only thing I hate about the mask. It messes up my makeup. It's a little crazy. Ugh. Uh, Robert Patillo, you have two of your biggest fans here with you, Dr. Deb and Dr. Knighton, because he's is crazy. How you doing, Robert?
Well, good morning, everybody.
Wait a minute. Robert and Dr. Deb and Dr. Verholden. No, and Dr. Knighton. Did you hear about what happened at the Amazon plant and the candle plant? The candle plant in Kentucky and the Amazon replenishment center down in downstate Illinois. they would not let the workers leave
I have
on
Dwight McKee
Friday.
on.
Thank you. I want to talk about that tomorrow. They would not let the workers leave. They would not let them leave.
Yes, ma'am, President.
Isn't that horrible? And this
And
guy,
the building collapsed.
Deborah, did you hear that he texted his girlfriend, Amazon won't let us leave, and he died.
Governors of pro-Trump
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. It's in the text. I've retweeted the screenshot. It is disgusting. He said Amazon will not let us leave,
so that they don't upset him or
and he died.
majority of his supporters amongst the Republicans in their state.
You know what? I pray for these folks' souls. I'm telling you, Jeff Bezos is up there in space, and they said they want to take, they said they want to be like Noah's Ark and take all the animals up there. I'm like, do you really think God's going to let you pollute another planet?
Waiting to talk to your doctor right now. But if you're having an irregular heartbeat,
How about that? Oh, see, and this is why we do this for India.
this could be a serious.
But she's not going to
Yeah.
tolerate this foolishness. I tell you that.
Yeah.
More likely to have a stroke.
She is up today.
Don't
Oh,
wait. Talk to your doctor by phone,
oh, bless her heart. I know she was so glad to get home with you all. She couldn't. Oh, we love
Say,
it.
I'm here. I'm here, Punkins. Say, my mommy had a long night, so I'm with my grandma this morning.
Are you in heaven or what?
If you could just see what I see, this face, this face, this face.
Unbelievable. A blessing from God. Just a blessing. She's a blessing from God. A blessing from God. She's just a
30
blessing.
seconds.
You have been blessed. Dwight McKee, you there?
Hey, Dr. D.
Hey, good morning, Dwight.
How you doing, Dr. D?
Yeah, he's the original Dr. D. I'm Dr. D Jr.
10 seconds.
Oh, stand by. Oh, boy, love it, love it, love it.
You
Yeah.
the grave over this morning.
Stand by. What?
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show on the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Tell everybody about us at WCPT 820. The nation's largest progressive talk radio station took over the airways for Air America, and we are growing more and more every day. And AM 950 Radio, my brothers and sisters to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul, we've got Dr. Deborah holding on, along with baby India. Yes, everybody, she's with us today. Yay! That's right, Joyce and Paul, everybody's so excited. And Dr. Knighton is still with us before she goes to get her kids off to school and all of that. But we've got Dr. D, as you said, Dr. Deborah, the original Dr. D, Dwight McKee, brilliant social scientist, and attorney Robert Patillo, brilliant civil rights attorney, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, and he also hosts his own show on WAOK, the iconic talk radio station in Atlanta, every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. I brought them back because they predicted so much of what we're seeing right now. They said, look, Donald Trump is going nowhere. They said that just before the election. They said it just after the election, as we were waiting for the results. They said he's going nowhere, and in fact, he is going to come back. Wow. And so that's what Hillary Clinton said. She is predicting that former President Trump, will run again in 2024. In an interview with NBC's Willie Geist, she said he seems to be setting himself up to do that. And if he's not held accountable, he gets to do it again. She uh, criticized the Republican Party for being taken over by a demagogue, that is President Trump, and they will hang their spawns on the wall as they walk into their offices. She said, wow. Well, she said a whole lot. She's being very, very honest. I wonder if she'll run against him. What do you think? I don't know. But we had a bomb dropped yesterday. That's right. We saw some texts from Donald Trump Jr., Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these some of the biggest hosts on Fox were saying, look, Mark Meadows, then chief of staff to President Trump, you have got to get President Trump out here to pull his people off the Capitol. This has gone too far. Now, mind you, while they were cheering this on, they were secretly and privately alarmed. So, what do you make of all of this, everybody? What do you make of all of this? And will these hearings about January 6th, will they move the needle? Will they stop President Trump from running, or someone like him from running? Because it's not just Trump; it's Trumpism. Will that stop? Will that stop this train, or will it help it to grow? What do you think? Do you think he's setting himself up to run for 2024? Because we already have a presidency in exile. I don't know if we've ever seen anything quite like this. Robert Patillo, your thoughts? You said we are going to have a Vichy presidency, and here we are. Here we are, a president in exile. Robert, talk to me.
You know, the closest analog to this, which really doesn't come close to, will probably be the after FDR was elected. Hoover never respected FDR. He considered him to be just a rube in many ways, a high society trust fund baby. So he, during the entirety of the nearly first term of the Roosevelt administration, he continued to act as if he was president. He believed that the failures of the New Deal by this young, naive president would result in the American people ushering him back into office after 4 years. That's probably the closest analog to this. Of course, there was Grover Cleveland, who did have 2 non-consecutive terms as president, the only time that's happened in history. But to have a United States president act as not only as if he had not lost, not concede the election, but continue to continuously undermine and divide the nation. Because normally what happens is you have the election night, regardless of what happens, or soon thereafter in the course of Bush v. Gore. You go through the process, you go through the recounts, you go through the court system, and then you give the president, the elected president, an opportunity to govern. There was a time where Senate nominees were passed 99-0, no matter how controversial they were, because the concept was, well, the president gets to have their cabinet, the president gets to have their justices on the Supreme Court, the president gets to have the opportunity to try to succeed in what he's doing, because at the end of the day, we're all on the same boat. So if you keep wanting the captain to fail, well, if he crashes the ship, you're on the boat with him. And so you want the ship to succeed, even if it's somebody you disagree with. That was the old conceptualization. What we have now is the continuous and ultimate campaign. The campaigns never end. There is no time for governing. There's only the time for campaigning. There's only the time for character assassination, demagoguery, demonization, which is the new form of American politics. So this is what is called such a caustic system, where things where even you have 80-90% public support cannot get passed through because the other side can simply not afford to allow us to get beat anything but a 51-49 nation. And President Trump has made it very clear that, yes, not only is he going to run in 2024, he is currently running right now. Him and Bill O'Reilly are going around the country doing stadium tours, filling up stadiums with MAGAs to continue doing these campaign-style rallies. He's continuously undermined even Republican politicians who have opposed him and have actively become part of this story when it comes to primary campaigns. Right now here in Georgia, you have Brian Kemp, the Republican governor, running for re-election, and Donald Trump is openly begging, basically, former Senator David Perdue to run against him because David Perdue has enough money in his pocket and has been loyal enough to Trump that he believes that is what can beat Stacey Abrams. He's called up Mitch McConnell to resign. He's injected himself into races around the country. He's not simply building a campaign. He's not simply building a movement. He's building an army, because he now understands that if he does go back into the White House, he has to have the coattails with him. He has to have the Senate on his side. He has to have enough members of the House of Representatives. So even if he loses in 2024 again, that instead of it being such a close split in the Senate, in the House, that he'll have the numbers needed to simply usher him into power, regardless of what the American people say. January 6th was just a walkthrough. That was a first attempt. You saw all the errors that happen when you're trying to attempt a coup. We haven't done it before. The next time these people come back, the next time that they do it, and they always come back, they always try again. Hitler had the Berlin Putsch, the Munich Putsch, where he attempted the first time. It didn't work. They came back with the bombing of the Reichstag. It worked that time. So they're going to come back. They're going to attempt it again. I think the American people need to understand we are outside the realm of traditional politics. We're no longer in our grandfather's America, as Joe Biden often thinks that we are, where he can sit down with Tip O'Neill and have a cocktail in the smoke room, and that will get things done. That's not the America we live in. We have to prepare for the fights that are actually ahead of us, and not for the glory days that are behind us.
Yeah, but even the America that he was talking about, it's not like we all got the greatest deal. I mean, it was becoming a corporatist America then, while they were sitting around, buddying up.
Well, the difference is that at least then we could at least agree on the same operative set of facts. Mm-hmm. We could agree on the same objective reality existing before us. I'll give you an example. So Democrats, when they look at the social spending bill, the human infrastructure bill, they say, well, we need more money for early childhood education. We're falling behind when it comes to the number of college graduates, so we need 2 years of free college. We have to have universal child care because women cannot enter the workforce because of the prohibitive cost of child care. Republicans look at that exact same bill and say, this is a socialist Marxist takeover of the American government by the deep state, and what they're trying to do is control us and microchip our bodies in order to have a one world government takeover controlled by Nancy Pelosi, the Pope, and all the leaders of the major corporations. We have to take up muskets in order to fight back against them. That's not really a place where you can come to a compromise position. Those are not the same realities that we're existing in. And it becomes very difficult when you have people who are able to select their own news, select their own facts, select their own information on the internet, because there's no unifying forces to say what exactly reality is. So reality becomes a pick your own adventure game. And these people pick this adventure where they really believe they need to be overturning the government. And I think the rest of us need to be understanding that they're not going anywhere. They're not calming down. They're not going to be reasoned with. These folks are ready for a fight, and the rest of the country needs to be ready for whatever they have planned.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
I think Robert summed it all up. And the problem is not so much that Trump thinks he's still the president, is that half the government think he's the president in exile. Mm-hmm. That's what the problem is that he still has as much influence over the existing government as Biden does, give it a take a vote or two. And so not only are they laying in wait to reemerge, is that they've set in motion all of the elements they need to win, from voter suppression to how they're going to jimmy up on the electoral votes, to what they're doing with gerrymandering. And so it is only, in my opinion, a matter of time to, if they're not able to stop him at a legal level, and I don't think they will be able to stop him, is that he will be able to reunite the party and to reemerge. And he'll have a budget, he have a platform, and he has the troops. So I never did expect him to go anywhere. And he didn't serve me look any differently to me than he did to Robert. He was always going to make another move. I'm surprised, really, that Hillary just kind of figured that out. That's the shocking part to me.
Did she just figure it out or just say it?
Well, it seemed to be a real revelation to her because she never prepared for it. Had she really understood what she was looking at back then, she would have started making adjustments in her approach to the campaign. But she really did think she was going to be the president, and had prepared a speech that she made the other day because she thought she was going to be able to make it. I never thought she'd make it.
Why?
Because he had the momentum.
Mm.
And he has the momentum now. And because you have to really analyze the consciousness of America. You and I used to talk about this all the time, how we understand America from the cities, because we fly over the country. But in order for you to understand America, real America, you have to take Amtrak. You have to take those trains and go to these small towns. These small towns that the hurricanes go through and the tornadoes go through. That's the real America.
Wait a minute, Dwight. Dwight, in furtherance of your point, please continue, that have been deindustrialized, that even 40 years ago were bustling centers, nerve centers of commerce and people. Now you pull into these train stations in major cities. It's in major American cities. Wait a minute. Not when you're in Japan, not when you're in Europe, okay? Not when you are in other countries around the world. No, 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 no. When you pull into major American cities, you see that they have been collapsed, Dwight.
Half of these towns are fueled by the prison industrial complex. Their complex is all the prison systems. When you go down 55 in Illinois, every major municipality down there is part of the prison industrial complex. Whether it's Pontiac, whether it's Dwight, whether it's Statesville, all the way down almost to St. Louis. And that's kind of where the country is. And so not only is there emotional and cultural interest invested in white supremacy and racism, their commerce is built around white supremacy and racism. They don't have a real way out unless you reindustrialize. And so the liberal moves that guys like Clinton made, where they deindustrialize the rural part of the economy, now it's coming back to bite them. And so their allegiance is to the America of their dreams, the old America, the America of Andy Rooney, and the mythology of America. That's where their allegiance is. And that's when they talk about let's take the country back. That's what they're talking about, Robert. They're not talking about a real country. They're talking about a country that existed in them, primarily in their minds and on greeting cards.
You know what, Robert, why don't you speak to this? And then you, Dwight. Carolyn Ruff says, I'm not a Biden, Harris, or Trump supporter. The White House is in big trouble. Joe Biden's ratings are lower than when Trump was president. Something is wrong with that picture. Your thoughts, Robert?
Well, it's interesting because oftentimes politics and sports intersect. And every single bad football team, for example, wants to back up quarterback to start, or then they can draft somebody and now magically make the team better. The quarterback is the problem. Then you put a new quarterback in there and they get beat all to hell, and then you want a new quarterback after that. Just think about with the Bears, Justin Fields, Andy Dalton, Mitch Trubisky. You can go on back to Rex Grossman, Kyle Orton. As far back as you want to go, you keep adding in new quarterbacks, the team still be sorry. The problem usually is the team, not just the whoever's in charge of the team or whoever's at the helm of it. You can't get over those structural issues. America is structurally broken. Our economy is structurally broken. The inequality in our society, structurally broken, down to the grassroots, needs to be fixed, as we say in the South, from the rooter to the tutor. And if you substitute Trump in for Obama, or if you substitute Biden and Harris in for Trump and Pence, it's still not going to fix the underlying fact that America has a broken healthcare system that is one of the most inept in the world, and people go bankrupt in this country from things like diabetes. It's not going to change the fact that we have inequalities in our educational system, where your zip code very much determines what your outcome is. That if you go to school on one street, you have a very good chance of growing up to go to college, be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. And if you go to school maybe a half mile or a mile away, you're probably going to go to prison, just based on the school that you go to. And that is America at its very core. We have to look at the fact that we have a completely broken infrastructure system in this country that's going to take $20 trillion to fix. And we're fighting over whether or not we're going to put $1 billion or $8 trillion into it. They don't have these types of power outages in the rest of the world that you have in America and industrialized countries. You don't fly out of Midway and then go take one stop and fly into Abu Dhabi, and then think to yourself like, yeah, Midway was definitely that's a first world airport. That's where we need to be coming out of. So we have structural problems in this country, and we keep putting Band-Aids on. We keep switching out the quarterback, switching out the head coach, switching out the general manager, instead of switching the policies that are in place. So many people checked out of the political system. We're going to see it especially after the 2020 election, where so many promises were made to young people and African Americans and Latinos and women and other minority groups by the Democratic Party that they have put no effort into actually doing. Now that they're in power, we've seen nothing on voting rights and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, nothing on the For the People Act, nothing on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, nothing on the H.R. 4, the reparations bill, those sorts of things. So why the hell are people going to get up and actually turn out again in 2022 for the same malarkey, as our current president likes to call it? They've been sold before. So this is why we see so little change. Our system was literally created, you can read the Federalist Papers, to be recalcitrant to change. They never wanted the system to reflect the will of the people. It was always about ensuring that rich white landowners would stay in charge no matter what. And this is what makes it so difficult to change the system, because this is not the system operating incorrectly. This is the system operating exactly as it was planned and still continue to help the same wealthy white landowners that was always meant to support.
That's always been the point. I saw Secretary Cardona, Miguel Cardona, who of course is the education secretary, on Charlemagne the God Show, an extremely popular radio host. And this is the same Charlemagne the God and his crew who really pushed President Obama up against the wall about what he did not deliver to the Black community. Well, he was pushing Secretary Cardona up against the wall about what they're not delivering to Black and brown people right now. So, Dwight, where do you see this going? Okay.
It depends, Santita. It's a lot of variables here. One is what happens with these legal matters. If they can find a smoking gun that they have not been able to find, which can neutralize at least some momentum that Trump has, that's what all of the hope of the Democrats is now. Or if they can turn around the dissonant guys in the party and become more liberal and bring more liberals to the table and create a momentum of their own for those who have been disenfranchised, who can change the course of the election. And that's a variable. The other variable is Trump. Is if none of those above happen and Biden keeps fading in the polls and Harris keeps fading in the polls, then Trump is going to reemerge as a legitimate candidate who can legitimately win. And he understands the system now. He understands the process. And he has people around him who understands the process.
And you know what I think he also understands, Dwight? I think he understands people, right? He looks like a winner. And people will abandon their better angels, their better principles, to be with someone who looks like they are winning.
Not just he understands it, the people around him understand it. The Bannon and the crowd that they're trying to put on trial now, their arrogance is not in a vacuum. They understand that they're on tricky ground and that they could really go to jail, but they have chosen to fight this fight. They're operating at a level of arrogance because they believe they're on the winning side. When you tell Congress, go take a hike, it's because you operating with a level of arrogance and defiance that you know something other folks don't know, that you can come out of it. And so not only does he understand his crowd. The people that are working with him understand his crowd. And I hate to say this, I think they understand it in some ways much better than the Democrats. Because that rural crowd that Rob was just talking about, that middle American crowd that we just saw get hit by that hurricane. Once you got past those buildings been blown down, what you saw was red flags flapping in the wind. Many of that crowd is a real, in spite of their poverty, in spite of their lack of jobs, in spite of their fact of lack of opportunity, they still wave that red flag. They're still Trump. They are a Trump crowd, and they still hold Biden in a certain measure of contempt.
But not red, white, and blue. Red flag, everybody. Ooh. We'll be talking about the latest on the Jussie Smollett case. Yes, the latest. Not only will he appeal, but we need to know what happened in the courtroom last week. Shelley Stanley is going to tell us about that because a lot happened. A lot happened that we don't know about, everybody. But you know what? I'm still taking your calls about President Trump. Do you think he's going to run again? Hillary Clinton said absolutely. And even with the January 6th commission, even with all of that, it seems that his supporters, as reflected by his support in Congress, are digging in their heels. What do you think about that, everybody? And then what about this bloated military budget? I mean, what about Mitch McConnell? Do you think he wants to build back better now? I'm not being shady. Seriously. I mean, he's holding up Build Back Better in the U.S. Senate. But now the western part of his state has been decimated. Decimated. Not only, 75% of one town has been wiped out. And just think, people not only with their homes wiped out, so with their jobs. What are they going to do? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in a few minutes. Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. I want you all just to weigh in, including you. Let's go, Brandon. Let's go. Call me back on the Santita Jackson Show. Paul, I had to take them off their pinching, because I don't have pierced ears anymore. I could never, my ears just never took to the piercing. And I had to take those earrings off because they clamped my ears. Ooh, they put my earlobes in a vice. But that way I don't lose them because I've lost a lot of earrings too. And some earrings and some rings because my fingers are very slender and small. Well, they're not small, but they're slender. So, everybody, Robert and Dwight, would you like to stay on so you can ask some questions of Shelley Stanley? Did you have her on your show, Robert? Is Robert still there?
I had her and also Attorney Davis on Sunday. It was a great conversation.
Really? How did that work out? You know, we're on YouTube and Facebook Live now, and on Reverend's page. We're streaming there. How did that go?
It was great, primarily because it was information that most of the people, most of our callers had never heard. It's interesting because we talked a lot about the fact that it seems as if the media kind of just flipped the switch, and they went from being 100% behind Mr. Smollett to 100% against him. And the fact that the media is able to draw those sorts of narratives and shape public opinion, and kind of the incestuous nature of our media cycle, where Chris Wallace is leaving Fox, but the reason he's where he is because his dad was a journalist.
I understand that.
Cooper is on prime time because his great grandfather owned the railroad. The Cuomo brothers were on there because their dad was a famous politician. So our media cycle isn't built upon truth and reliability and journalistic integrity, those sorts of things. It's really based on who you knew and who somebody else knew for you. And because of that, we get a very slanted version of the facts.
And it's a very closed system. Because quite frankly, if your politics are populist, you have a problem. I don't care who your family might be. if you have populist, pro-people, anti-poverty, let's balance people's interests with those of the interest of corporations. If you step over there, you have a problem whether you're black, white, brown, yellow, or red. No matter who your family are. I saw that with my brother when he was in Congress. His politics were just too far to the left. They were too populist. And the power structure in Chicago and in Washington wanted him out. Yeah, I said it. It's true. And that's what we do. I mean, one of the last of the real hardcore populists that you have in Congress. You have Maxine, you have Bernie, you have Barbara Lee. I mean, there was a time, and Dwight, you remember this, when the Black Caucus was like, you could absolutely, they were not corporatist as they are now. I mean, I got a lot of friends in the Black Caucus. I love them to pieces, but they're not the Ron Dellums and the John Conyers and, you know, Charlie Rangel and just on and on. We could just keep on going with these people who we knew would take reliably populist stances, Dwight, and that's done.
Yeah, they added his 10,000.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, he was getting more legislation passed than the whole caucus would. But he could also operate independently because he had a church. And back then, many of the congressmen had their own church congregations, and so they could be more independent.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's because being, what is this? They say the richest, freest black person in America is the black preacher. Typically, I mean, he's the richest, freest black man in America is the black preacher, and that's pretty much it. But oh boy, that is no longer the case. That is no longer the case. Oh boy, it's a lot.
Robert, why do you think
I'm having this moment. I'm so excited to be.
Dwight?
Yeah, I was asking Robert, why did he think Hillary was so surprised at us?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Dwight.
Okay, can you bring the... Okay, Dwight, are you on speaker?
Can you hear me, Robert?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, why do you think Hillary was so surprised about Trump's move?
Well, because Hillary is the most arrogant politician probably in the last half century. In her mind, she was owed the presidency. She should have never lost to Obama in the first place, let alone losing to Trump. So I think the same arrogance and hubris that we saw with Hillary did her in 2008, did her in 2016. Then we'll do her in as she tried to run again. And one of the issues I think we have is Stacey Abrams has a lot of that same Hillary Clinton energy when it comes to arrogance and hubris for running for the governorship of Georgia, and that's never a good position to be in.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. 100%, yes.
Please explain.
Very much the same vibe.
This could be a serious.
Well, no, please explain.
Part of it, part of the issue is that if you go back to the beginning of the 2018 race, when Stacey Abrams announced she was running for governor, every single black woman in the Georgia state legislature endorsed the woman running against her, Stacey Evans. Stacey Abrams did not have broad grassroots support here in Georgia because of the deal she did with former Republican Governor Nathan Deal back in 2011, 2012, which really limited the vote, limited the Hope Scholarship, which helped poor students. She was very much seen as being a vassal of Republican Governor Nathan Deal. So she went out of state and got people like Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Oprah, etc., the Hollywood
15 seconds.
campaign for her and send money into the state. And Stacey Evans, who was running against her, just couldn't go dollar for dollar. But because of this, Stacey Abrams has this idea that the state is owed to her, that he's just supposed to be governor.
Hold on.
Change the world, change the world. Can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. You know, we're going to have John Nichols with us at the bottom of the hour. We still have Dr. D, Dwight McKee, and attorney Robert Patillo with us. We're going to have Shelley Stanley with us to talk about what happened in the courtroom with Jussie Smollett. Got to get some more details of this case and continue to give them to you, because when you hear them, it's changed a lot of minds. It's changed a lot of minds. Changed a lot of minds. We had no cameras, and we had a corporate media who were unwilling to report all of the facts. Wow. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 50 degrees today, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 38 degrees, partly cloudy. The Dow closed down 320 points. The NASDAQ closed down 217 points. S&P 500 closed down 43 points. No NBA in Chicago yesterday. No, no, no. The Chicago Bulls game was postponed, and in the NHL, the Blackhawks game was also pushed back against the Flames. Why? Because these sports teams have a lot of people who have COVID-19. In the NBA, you have to have 9 people that you can put on the court. Chicago didn't have that. So we're praying for our teams, but we've got a whole lot of players who are not able to participate because of the COVID protocols. Praying for the Chicago Bulls and the Chicago hockey team, everybody. What about the Capitol riot? Well, Donald Trump Jr., Fox News personalities, and lawmakers unsuccessfully implored then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows on January 6th to get President Donald Trump to stop the violence at the Capitol, according to text messages relayed by the House committee investigating the attack. The committee released these explosive new details last night as it met to advance a referral of Meadows, a former member of Congress, to the Justice Department on a criminal contempt of Congress charge. Do you think that's going to work, everybody? The Omicron variant of coronavirus is spreading quickly in several countries. It's killed at least one person in the UK and put 10 people into the hospital, most of them vaccinated, according to authorities. China says it has detected its second case of Omicron. And so we will see where all of this goes, everybody. Workers who were stuck in the factories in Edwardsville, Illinois, the Amazon workers. Well, there was a gentleman who ended up dying, Larry Verdon. He ended up texting his girlfriend. He was one of 6 people who was killed in the collapse of that Amazon, replenishment center. Well, guess what? It turns out he texted his girlfriend and said, Amazon, quote, won't let us leave. Wow. And many workers are also charging at that same replenishment center that that they were not given the appropriate safety protocols. There is no basement, for example, there. Can you believe they built a new facility that has no basement in the middle of Tornado Alley? Yeah, and they did not go over what to do in the time of a tornado, which is something that impacts this part of the country very, very frequently. And factory workers out at the candle factory in Kentucky, well, guess what? In Mayfield, Kentucky, they were threatened with being fired if they left before the tornado, according to employees, everybody. What do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278. We're going to examine that more, probe that more deeply tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody, you know, I'm really interested in us owning our homes. And as we see 300,000 African Americans who have been purged from the city because they haven't been able to refinance their homes, or they cannot afford to buy homes, or they think that because they have poor credit or they've been bankrupt, that there's no hope for them. That's not true. Team Hochberg has some solutions for you. When we're looking at getting our homes appraised, what's in the news? More and more African Americans are coming forward. Certainly the media are now spotlighting the stories in which they have to go to their white friends to pretend that their white friends own their home so they can get the appropriate appraisal. Well, guess what? Team Hochberg, David Hochberg and his team want to end all of that. If you want to purchase a new home, if you want to refinance your existing home, he can help you. If you've had bad credit, if you've not established credit, if you've not had any success getting money to get your home to code, Team Hochberg can help you. Please call them at 1-855 56 Hochberg, 855-56 Hochberg, or 56 David 56david.com. We're going to be talking about this more and more as we go forward into 2022, because we want you to have every opportunity to keep your home, to hold on to your home, or to get one. So please call Team Hochberg at 855-563-2843. I want you to get your homes, everybody. Okay, so let us get to Shelley Stanley. Shelley, we had so much going on yesterday as we were talking about Julian Assange. I had you queued up, and I said, oh my goodness. I can't get to Shelley because people hadn't heard the details of that case, like we have not heard the details of the Jussie Smollett case. I am so grateful to you because it is your investigative journalism, your fearless pursuit of truth in this case that has given us context, and that has given us um, we would not have known the backgrounds of these Osundairo brothers. We would not have known so much of what has happened in this case had it not been for your work. Um, what happened what happened on Friday? Because of course we were waiting for the verdict, and then we found out that he was found guilty on 5 of 6 charges. Did we miss anything?
Yeah. So I think it was on Thursday that the jury came back with a guilty verdict, and basically what happened right before then, and it did make it into the paper, so people can look up that article if you want to in the Chicago Tribune. But what happened was Judge Lynn, about 4 hours before the jury verdict came in, he on his own decided to send the jury the full Good Morning America video without being asked by the jury to send that to them. And in the Chicago Tribune article, they quote from, the transcripts, and basically the prosecution had asked him during the exhibit discussion the day before, what will go back to the jury. They wanted that sent back. Judge Lynn denied it, saying that only, a very short portion had been shown during the trial. So he said no. Then the following day on his own, when the jury was taking so long to deliberate, he decided to send it back on his own. Jussie's team objected, saying, if you do this, you need to re-impanel the jury. We need to be able to give context and cross-examine this, because they were saying, this is a 17-minute Hollywood-edited video taken from a 1.5 hour sit-down interview that Jussie did. So, obviously right there, you can see that a lot was edited out. The way it was edited together is in question, all these things, right? But Judge Lynn denied that. He sent it back, and then within 4 hours, there was a verdict. And, Vanya Davis was about to do Instagram Live with Melina Abdullah from the Black Lives Matter in Los Angeles to expose this when the verdict came out. So, that is definitely jury tampering by the presiding judge. And, letters were sent, or emails were sent to Chief Judge Evans and also Erica Reddick, Judge Erica Reddick, his direct supervisor. She's the one who intervened during the trial itself to uphold or reinstate Jussie's Sixth Amendment right to let the trial be a public trial and let the public back in. I think if it was up to Judge Lynn, he would have just completely violated Jussie's Sixth Amendment right throughout the rest of the trial when he banned the public from the courtroom starting on Monday of the second week. So, letters were sent to both those judges to alert them to this jury tampering, and they did both respond. One of them, Judge Erica Reddick, said, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm still here.
Were you? Okay. Yeah. So I'll just say they both responded. There are, they're saying that basically, they can't intervene directly in another judge's decision, but there are ways to make these complaints known, complaint processes and things like that. But, unfortunately, apparently the way that our legal system works is that even if the judge is doing the misconduct themselves, they can't really be held directly and immediately responsible. And they have to rule that they committed acts worthy of a mistrial to have a mistrial. And so obviously a lot of them probably won't do that. They're not going to say, yes, I committed this misconduct, so now you get a mistrial. Even though he committed several acts of misconduct, many of them very public, and they were even in the paper during the trial. So we'll see. Maybe he'll do it. But that's where we are now.
Well, Carolyn Ruff says that Jussie Smollett was set up by the Nigerian brothers, and she stands with Jussie Smollett because the system is broken. I want to know what your thoughts are, everybody. I have Dwight McKee, noted sociologist, with us, and Robert Patillo, attorney Robert Patillo, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, civil rights attorney. And of course, you were on his radio show this weekend. And Robert Patillo, as people heard Shelley Stanley, and as they heard her investigative work, the result of her work, how did they react?
Well, I think a big part of it is just on the idea of why this information wasn't made public. Why, we're so used to in 2021 going into 2022 for everything to be televised, to be on videotape. Is it real or is it Memorex? We're used to cell phone video, surveillance camera video. We've entered that 1984 state where everything is a public record. So the fact that the Smollett trial was not live streamed, or they couldn't see it live as it happened, was very suspect to people, because I think that if people saw these things happening directly instead of kind of cold courtroom reports of them, then you will very much have a different public opinion around it. And of course, as we were saying on Sunday, nobody trusts the police. And I think that regardless of what these Back the Blue rallies are trying to push nationwide, there's a big chunk of the American population that has no respect for, no belief in anything that the police are telling them at any given time. And that's a deeper structural problem, as we were talking about in the last segment, that has to be solved, because at some point in time, we're going to have some confidence between the public and the police will do nothing to inspire that. So in many ways, I think people, their distrust of the system, their distrust of the police, their distrust of courts, have led them to want to get more information on this. I think people do want to look more deeply into this and do want a better understanding of exactly what went on. And one of the callers said, well, it can be both and. It can be that the police are corrupt, and also that Jussie wasn't telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and one does not obfuscate the other. One does not take away from the veracity of the others. I think more has to come out, more information even presented to the public.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts? We see that these brothers were held by the police. You're held for 48 hours before you can be charged, and then the 47th hour, they changed their story, even though they were so strongly in Camp Jussie that they basically went on a hunger strike as they were held for these 2 days. And then after they changed their story, they were put in a hotel and protected by the police. Your thoughts about this case?
Well, I always thought it was so much more about Kim Fox than it was about Jussie and his family. I think that, Jussie may have, made a mistake, may have made it up. I never could get enough evidence either way, because this trial was so clandestine that you never could really see the real evidence. But it was always interesting to me how they used the case to beat down Kim Fox and to set up to neutralize all of the discord with Chicago Police Department, which, if people remember at that time, was really under major review. The federal government had put them under review. They were really been held accountable for what had happened to McDonald. The history of them having really beating down minorities and shot a lot of people without explanation. All those things were being reviewed. People was talking about, cutting the budget. And so all of a sudden you have this major backlash from the police against the community to say this is why, you have to have us involved. Either we'll do a sit-down strike and we'll do anything, or we'll become very aggressive and expose the fact that you have these, liberals who are out of control and, who selling out the law. And so in the center of that was Kim Fox, and the fact that she was being very aggressive against the police, and they were using this, I thought, as a way to get out of office. So for me, I'm still looking at the evidence, and I'm eager to hear what else that your guest has to say.
Well, why don't you
about
give
the
it?
case.
Well, why don't you give us a quick rundown, Shelley? I've got about 5 minutes left. Some of the commonly held misconceptions, or just what we do not know. If you can give me about 4 or 5 points.
Okay. So, one thing was that, the police found a bunch of evidence immediately after the attack, within 3 days of the attack, that they then lied to the public about and said that they didn't, they were telling us they didn't find any evidence at all. They didn't find any videos. They didn't find any witnesses, but that was a complete lie. One video that they found was of the attack itself. It shows someone coming up behind Jesse as he's walking home. And then just as that person comes up behind Jesse, the camera mysteriously turns off. And CPD detectives write in their report that it turns off due to insufficient motion, which, is very hard to believe given CPD's history with video tampering and things like that. Another video shows the two masked men running by a guard at the Sheraton Hotel after the attack. And CPD went and interviewed this guard after seeing him on film within 3 days of the attack. And he told CPD that one of the men was white, 6 feet tall, and masked, and that the second man blocked his own face from the guard. And this is something that, if there were cameras in the courtroom, the public would have seen. But that guard did get on stand, and he said the same thing. He said, yes, the person who ran by me was masked and white. And then he said that he had been threatened and pressured by the special prosecutor's office for hours to change his story and to say that the man who ran by him was black and not white. And so, CPD had within 3 days of the attack, the attackers coming up behind Jesse, the attackers running from the scene, running by a guard. The guard gave them the exact same description that Jesse did. And they hid it all from the public, and they lied to us and said that they didn't find anything. Another witness was Jesse's neighbor, and she told CPD that a white man with a rope in his pocket, appearing to be waiting for something, was standing outside the apartment building just before Jesse was attacked. And of course, they didn't tell the public that either. Also, I looked up the detectives on the case, and they have more than 560 misconduct allegations against them that were filed formally, against them by the people of the city of Chicago. And they've also been sued for misconduct 16 times, with the city paying out almost $7 million in those cases. One of the detectives on the case is Detective Richard Hagan, who was sued in the Laquan McDonald case by Laquan's family for participating in the cover-up of Laquan's death. And he was put in charge of many aspects of Jesse's case, many of which were very troubling aspects. And I wrote an article about that you can read. It's called Jesse Smollett and the MAGA Hat That Never Was, that details some of Richard Hagan's involvement in Jesse's investigation. But, the detectives just were, I also wrote another article called Jesse Smollett, the Chicago Police Department, and the disappearing video footage trick. And that goes into a lot of the detectives' backgrounds. Like, you can click on their names and go to the link and see what they have been accused of doing or sued for doing, and read that story. So, I can't really go into all the detectives' backgrounds right now, but they're very, very, very troubling. They are accused of things like homophobic hate speech, racism, torture, tampering with evidence, framing people, shooting innocent people and then blaming them for it, arresting the wrong person when it was obviously the wrong person, several sexual misconduct, drug possession or selling drugs, official bribery and corruption, many, many crimes. So that's extremely troubling. And I wanted to just say now that, Judge Lynn, he also should recuse himself or should call a mistrial because he should have recused himself for a conflict of interest. His wife donated to Trump many, many times, and you can find those records online, Pamela Lynn. She was in the courtroom the entire trial, even though he kicked out the public and tried to kick out many of Jesse's family. He let her sit there. Anyway, she has donated to Trump many times, and obviously this is a very political case. We can see this weekend the Trump family immediately got involved again. Even Donald Trump Jr. posted many memes suggesting that Jesse should be raped in prison and things like this. So, there's that. Also, I was just looking her up a little more and found that she works for a real estate agency called Compass. And when Compass was first forming and becoming a public company, Joshua Kushner, who's Jared Kushner's brother, gave them a lot of money, invested into the company so that it could become public. And to this day is one of the biggest investors into the company. I think it's number 4 in Thrive, which is Joshua Kushner's company, capital investment company.
10 seconds.
It's Thrive's 4th largest investment, Compass. And that's what Pamela Lynn works for. So that's obviously a conflict of interest that should have been, declared by Judge Lynn, and he should have taken himself off the case.
Well, but they need to file charges against him, period. His behavior's been outrageous. Yeah. It's been outrageous. And just to think that this happens over and over to all unknown people who have no resources all the time. No wonder the prison pipeline is clogged. Shelley Stanley, what a blessing you are. Investigative journalist. Don't worry, you're going to be back on the Santita Jackson Show. We got to have you back because we're going to continue to pound out the issues in this case. For those who cannot get the issues in their cases, those people who've been treated unjustly in this system. We're doing it for everybody, for you and your families. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show as we talk about this bloated military budget with John Nichols. Back in just a minute. Okay. Shelley, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Santita.
Oh, well, no, we got to have you back.
I mean, I think, I heard some people saying like, oh, this was a impartial jury and this was the result they came to, and so we have to just accept it. But of course, those people don't know that the jury was tampered with and that Judge Lynn had barred so many things from being talked about in the first place. The jury doesn't even know that Judge Lynn barred the defense team from talking about police misconduct, Eddie Johnson, Kim Foxx, the CPD leaks, the officer's background. Nobody knows. So just look at it from outside and say that it was an impartial jury and they came to a piece of judgment is, I think, a little naive or just not knowing, being lied to basically and not knowing what was actually going on.
Dwight, your thoughts? Dwight, are you still there? Okay. Well, I tell you, that's why I want you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I couldn't hear you at all.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I had you on mute.
Okay.
It's Chicago politics as usual. It's the justice system, the judges have always been part of a very corrupt system, and they've always protected the policemen. Many of them are related. You know, they are Shays or McDonald's, or they come out the same tribe, and it's most of them are byproducts of a patronage system that has been generations old. And so you get that. That's how Chicago politics work. And it's unfortunate, and it's great to have these kind of investigative journalists like him. I mean, I like the sister that is telling the whole story.
Miss Stanley.
Most times,
Oh, yeah. Which is why I've had her on the show, and she's been so gracious in coming on. Because you have to, I know you might feel like you're a broken record, but you're not. People, this is the first time a lot of people have heard what you're saying, Shelley. You know what I mean? It's the first time.
Definitely.
So anytime you
I
can.
definitely,
No, please keep on
I was
going.
just going to say, I definitely tried to get it out many times to the public and to the media, many, many different realms of the media, but they just had no interest in publishing, this very obviously relevant information. So I definitely appreciate, just being able to talk directly to people and share the information so that they know,
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's why, I try to have you on here so that people can hear you. That means a lot when people can hear you. And I'm so glad you were able to do Robert's show, because that means a whole lot. You're hitting a lot of people, and that means a lot. Believe me, it does.
Definitely. Yeah, I think, it's one of those struggles where it's not easy. You don't get the big microphone. The media is actively trying to cover all of this up. So, yeah, it's just one of those struggles where it's like it's grassroots. You have to be speaking directly to the people.
Well, all of our movements have been grassroots.
Like you said, on behalf of the people. It's not.
Well,
there's no agenda.
All of our movements have been grassroots. Dr. King, the largest audience he actually spoke to, the largest audience he spoke to was an anti-war
20 seconds. John Nichols is up.
audience. Thank you so much. Hey, John.
Hello. How are you?
How are you? Well, we've been talking about so much.
Fine.
There's so much.
Sounds like it.
Oh my gosh, there's so much.
5 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Do we have Chaparral?
Yes.
Okay.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Let us talk about this bloated military budget. But first, you know what? It's Christmas time. It's Christmas time. I love this time of year. I'm the Christmas girl. I love it, I love it, I love it. And we have got to get our victuals together. You know what? If you want to get some of the best food, the way your grandmama used to make it, Chaparral Wells does it with Celebrations by Us. Chaparral Wells, we're closing in on the deadline. So what can we get from you?
Yes, Santita, thank you so much for taking my call today. We are still taking orders until December 17th, which is Friday. That's our last day. At 5 p.m., we're cutting it off. So give us a call at 708-526-4546. That's 708-526-4546. We have your Christmas ham, your smothered chicken, your smothered beef, as well as also your mashed potatoes and gravy, mac and cheese, mozzarella, your greens and your green beans. And don't forget our sweets. We have our peach cobbler, banana pudding, as well as also our and our pound cake, our Christmas cookies, whatever it is that you need for this holiday season. Don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546. That's 708-526-4546. Thanks so much, Santita.
Whoa, you've got pound cake now?
Yes, of course.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well give us that number again, Chaparral.
708-526-4546. 708-526-4546. or you can also reach us on celebrationsbyus.org.
Oh, all right, everybody, because I've got to put in my order today. Hello, hello, hello. Before I bring you up, John Nichols, we're always so glad to have you, national correspondent for The Nation magazine. Of course, there's so much on the table. We're going to be talking about this bloated military spending that we do. I mean, they get money they don't even ask for. But let me go to Noel first. Noel, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Ms. Jackson. How you doing?
It's great hearing your voice, Noel.
Yes, I was calling about it. January 6th commission.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if members of Congress were involved in the January 6th incident, why don't they have a grand jury to investigate this case instead of Congress?
Well, you know what? Let me just bring it right to you, John Nichols. And we've talked about this before. Because, we've been looking at, these explosive revelations. I know we're talking about the military. We're going to do that. But we're looking also just at how things worked, right, John? So talk to us about what we're seeing. We're seeing that, the most popular cable news network deeply involved with the president. And quite frankly, all of these people are in bed together, Democrat, Republican, right and left. You know how I am, because I've just seen it. I know how it works. That having been said, we had an insurrection at the Capitol. We had an attempted coup. That's a little different. John Nichols, that's just we're battling to save the soul of our democracy, not just the Democratic Party. I mean, it's just, you have yet another book to write. So why don't we have, why isn't this more serious? Why don't we have more serious charges that are being leveled, or are they being stymied in some way?
Well, they were stymied at the start. I mean, the House of Representatives impeached Donald Trump, bipartisan articles of impeachment, and the Senate refused to convict him. And so, I mean, this is the original sin, if you will. You can't have a situation where a president of the United States is actively involved in an insurrection, and because of his own party's refusal, remember, not even all Republicans. You had 57 senators, including, I think, 7 Republicans who voted to convict. But the vast majority of his own party's representatives in the Senate were able to stop accountability. So you began with a failure of accountability. That's the critical thing to understand. And it has extended from there. The House itself and the Senate have not policed their own. There is clear evidence that members of Congress conspired with, associated with, engaged with the January 6th insurrection. They have not been held to account. Representative Cori Bush from Missouri has introduced a resolution that asks that the House Ethics Committee and other committees investigate members who were giving aid and comfort to the insurrectionists and to consider all possible responses up to and including expulsion. That has not been taken up. And the interesting thing is the Democratic House. So even though a Democratic member has proposed a deep investigation of accountability within the House that might even lead to expulsion, where you prove wrongdoing, that hasn't happened. And so there's a whole bunch of failures to go to the level that is appropriate considering the crisis that occurred and that is, in fact, ongoing. And so I respect your caller's, Noel's, reference to a grand jury. But at the end of the day, Congress ought to begin by policing itself, and they're not doing that. So I think that's an important place of understanding here. Now, as regards the January 6th Commission, they're beginning to ramp up. There does seem to be some evidence that they're taking this more seriously, and it's slow, way too slow. But there is a dynamic that occurs in Congress. It happened certainly during Watergate, where initially there's an investigation, and then as the bad players resist that investigation, the members become more and more confident and stronger in their response. And I think you're starting to see some of that with the January 6th Commission. I've been very critical of the January 6th Commission because I thought that they were too slow, did too many things behind closed doors. I thought there was just a lack of energy there. I think I'm seeing more energy of late, and I'm certainly hopeful about that.
Well, that's your book, The Battle for the Soul of the Democratic Party, because, it's the energy that you get from a Bernie Sanders. It's the energy that you get from a Dennis Kucinich. And the energy that you get from Maxine Waters and the Jesse Jacksons and on and on and on. The so-called, and they're not hard left. They just want things to be right, really. And it's that energy that we need.
Yeah, and I think this is an important thing to understand. When we talk about Democrats and Republicans, the difference in a sense of urgency, a sense of drive to actually get things done is jaw-dropping, right? Republicans, I mean, we know full well what they're going to do. They're very determined. They seem prepared to push the limits, to take charge, to grab any opportunity they get. I'm not saying that's good. I think it's actually often very troublesome. But in response to that, Democrats, who you would hope to be more reasoned, more responsible, on the better side, at least of some of these issues, they seem lethargic at times. They are willing to let months go by without action. They don't return to the core issues as often as they should. And it's not all Democrats. You've just listed some who are very, very good. But it's unfortunate that we're at a point right now where if you look at domestic policy, they've been talking for 6 months about passing the Build Back Better bill. Now, you can blame Manchin and Sinema. I think you should. But the fact is, 6 months of not moving that's why Biden's approval ratings are low. We've been talking since January 6th about accountability. We've got accountability for a lot of the low-level folks, but it certainly isn't moving up into the higher-level folks.
Whoa,
Maybe
wait
now,
a minute.
finally, with Meadows.
John, stop it. It's almost January 6th again. Wow. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
No, it's just when you said that it kind of hit me that it's been 11 months.
Yeah, they're going to let a year pass without accountability.
Wow.
And that's just not how it works. It doesn't function that way. And if I can give you one last notion here, it relates to what we're talking about a little bit today. So we've had all this lethargy, right? All this, kind of like a lot of talk, not a lot of action. One place where they're actually moving urgently and quickly is to spend more money than ever on the Pentagon, more money than ever on the military-industrial complex.
Wait. That they're not asking for, right? They get money they don't even ask for.
Just to give it. Exactly. Let's get clarity here. Let's get clarity.
Gosh.
Great people in our military, highly responsible people, actually put together budget proposals, right? And then they get tossed aside by the politicians who say, oh, well, my campaign contributors want more money, right? This military contractor wants more money. This base in my district needs more. And so the end result is that it always goes above the baseline that the Pentagon needs, right? But more than that, understand this. A Democratic Congress with a Democratic president right now is on track to spend more than Donald Trump ever spent on the military and on the military contractors, the military-industrial complex. And a Democratic Congress is about to give Joe Biden a Department of Defense budget, an NDAA, that is bigger than what Joe Biden requested.
How does that happen?
$25 billion.
No. How does that happen? Wait a minute. What Build Back Better is stuck in the U.S. Senate. McConnell's in the way of that. And half of his state needs to be rebuilt right now. This is crazy.
Oh, and he's thanking the government. He's thanking Biden for declaring disaster zones and things like that. But he is making it harder, on the other hand, for Biden to do the things that he needs to do. And here's the bottom line on all of this. When our government has a sense of urgency, it can do pretty much anything. It's huge. It's the most powerful country in the world, most powerful military, most powerful economy. When they want to do something, they can do it. Don't ever think that is impossible. But the problem is that at this point, they're sending very clear signals about their priorities. The Pentagon budget sailing through, moved through the House with some opposition, but certainly not sufficient. Set to move through the Senate with some opposition, Bernie Sanders and a few others, but certainly not sufficient. And so that's going to get to the president's desk. And at the end of 2021, the first year of a Democratic president with a Democratic Congress since 2010, right? First year in more than a decade where we had all the pieces together there to govern. Now, admittedly, with Manchin, Sinema, narrow majorities, all the problems, I accept that. But the first time we got it, what do we finish the year off? With the largest military-industrial complex budget ever, but without getting done the baseline stuff on the domestic level. And the baseline stuff on the domestic level, Build Back Better, understand, that's a 10-year plan. So over 10 years, that 1.75 trillion, that's its amount. That's what it would be, 1.75 trillion. On the other hand, the Pentagon budget, the NDAA, is a one-year budget for 780 or roughly 780 billion. But over 10 years, that would be 7.8 trillion. So you understand what I'm talking about?
No, I need you to say that one more time so we can get that.
If we took this, what they're about to pass in the Senate, and we took it out and extrapolated over 10 years, made it the same as Build Back Better. If they were passing a 10-year budget the same way that Build Back Better is, it would be $7.8 trillion, as opposed to $1.75 trillion for our domestic needs, for education, healthcare, family needs, getting kids into college, fighting poverty, saving the planet. And you understand? So we're getting a very powerful signal about our priorities here, even under a Democratic administration. And our first priority appears to be making sure that defense contractors keep very, very rich, that they live large. While we still have people in this country going hungry, people worrying about their housing, worrying about their future, and an unstable economy that frankly needs to be, needs help in a lot of ways. We have a lot low unemployment, high inflation. Once again, the working class, right, the person that goes out and works hard, they finally can find a job, but they can't afford to buy things with the money they make. So it's clear there needs to be an intervention. It's clear that more needs to be done at the federal level, on the domestic level, right, on what we need at home. And yet, where is the sense of urgency? You watch it. Last week and this week, that sense of urgency is toward military spending at astronomical levels, more than Trump spent, more than Biden asked for, more than the responsible people within the military have said they need.
Let me go to Renee. Renee has a question for you. Renee, what's on your mind today?
Good morning.
Good
Thanks
morning.
for taking my call. Good morning. I want to know how much of the money that the Democrats and Republicans are giving for the military budget is going to fund drones that are going to drop on the people of Yemen and Syria and in Africa. I want to know how much is going to, if any, to the mercenaries like Blackwater who wreak havoc over the world, and to stage coups in places like Venezuela to overthrow governments that we don't like, and how much is going to actually help military families so that they can live better. How much of that is in their budget that they can?
Wow. Because we see these payday loan centers, right? On the edges of these bases. I mean, our enlistees are struggling. They are struggling.
Yeah, and the payday loan centers should be banned.
Of course.
They shouldn't be there.
And they should also get paid.
We should have, well, of course, they should be paid sufficiently, and also we should have a postal banking system so that people can cash their checks. And, the whole game that's being played in banking, we could talk about for an hour. And it is predatory, especially toward working class people, and particularly toward a lot of working class people in the military. But the caller also asked about how much is in this for drones. So, sit down and take this in. There's $7.5 billion for so-called robotic platforms and related technologies. That's effectively drones. $7.5 billion. That's a lot of money right there. But beyond that, of course, that's supported by a tremendous amount of quote unquote investment in contractors that are doing research in these robotic platforms, And then the caller also asked about, how much is there to, try and destabilize governments or try and mess with governments around the world. Now, that is the interesting thing because, of course, the military is used for what its commanders tell them to do. So you can effectively say that, overwhelmingly, this budget is set up for that if that is what the commanders decide to do. But there's also a lot of that involves the CIA and the kind of hidden budgets that we don't even talk about, with tens of billions of dollars that is allocated on a regular basis, not through the Department of Defense, but through intelligence agencies, which is, we know a long history of how that has been used and abused. So the bottom line is, again, understand this core concept. Our government always has the money to do what it wants to do. It has as much, indeed more money than it needs to do what it wants to do. It is simply a question of what it chooses. And we're getting a real-time illustration this week because our government, we're coming into the holiday season. It's almost Christmas, almost New Year's, through Hanukkah, through Kwanzaa. We have all these many celebrations at this time of year. People in Congress want to get out of Washington, get back home to their districts. So they want to finish stuff up quickly. They're under a bit of pressure there because they get very long breaks. They have a much less demanding life in many ways than the average working class person. And so they want to get to their break. I understand, okay, that's so be it. But it's in this period right now, this week or so, where you see their priorities come to a fore, right? Because you know as well as I, Santita and callers, folks, if you're trying to finish things up before the holiday, right, you're working at a very intense rate. You're, say, I got to finish that, I got to finish that, I got to finish that. I want to get these things done before I take off. So you begin to prioritize. Well, what do I have to get done? Well, what has moved to the top of the have to get done list for our Congress is Pentagon budget, military budget. Not Build Back Better. There's talk that they may get to Build Back Better. I certainly hope they do. But I can tell you that if I had to put $100 down, say, what am I going to bet is going to get dealt with and what isn't, I would bet that the Pentagon budget gets done, and I would bet that Build Back Better doesn't.
Stunning. I mean, as we are looking at, I don't know how we can move with the heartland having been gutted. There are whole towns that have been wiped out, not just people's houses, but where they work.
Absolutely true.
It's like, what are you talking about? And if we ask for $1 billion of those dollars for the people in the middle of this country, it would be a fight. Unless, of course, we're going to give it, unless the socialists are going to give it to Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul. It's just, this is crazy. Well, let me bring on Brian.
Well, the money's going to be there.
The money's there, but the priorities are not there, and I'm just trying to figure out how we move the needle. Very quickly, Brian, what's on your mind? Thank you so much for calling back.
Hi. As quickly as I can.
Of course.
I would wish that Nina Turner would announce her candidacy for presidency for the next election. She was co-chairman of the Bernie Sanders campaign, livable wage for all, reduction in military spending, women's rights, ending poverty. She was concerned with climate change and collective bargaining rights, and she was a state senator and candidate for Ohio Secretary of State. I have a magazine article from 2014 about that right in front of me. And if the evil Donald Trump with no experience at all could win, why couldn't Nina Turner announce her candidacy, and why couldn't she win as a Democratic Socialist?
Well, I give that to you.
Let's answer that question as best we can. First and foremost, I super appreciate your regard for Nina Turner. I've known her for a very long time, and I will tell you she is one of the most remarkable people, but not just in politics, but in life. She's just an amazing, very, very special person who's been on this show more than once.
She's a regular.
To credit of Santita for giving her a platform. And so, I love the thought. But look, the bottom line is that at this point, if Nina Turner's going to do anything, it would be perhaps to run for Congress or to run for something in her state. That's what she's shown an interest in, and I think, frankly, that she's got tremendous potential there, and I'm always one who talks about that and focuses on that. So I think putting her up in a presidential race at this point, I don't think that's something she's looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, I'm not a big pusher for, shoving people into races that they're not anticipating. But if she actually ran for president, I think it'd be pretty fascinating.
It would be. It would be.
This is, by the way, and a caller points out an interesting thing. We're talking about people and experience, right? People who've been around, who've done things and what we call experience. And Nina and I Santita and I will recall a gentleman who had never held public office. He was a pastor and an activist named Jesse Jackson. And he ran in 1984 and 1988. Those campaigns were absolutely transformational for our country. They didn't make Jesse Jackson president, unfortunately. But boy, they sure changed the life and the culture, the character of our politics in fundamental ways. So I do agree with the caller. Whoever might run at some point down the line, and there's so many folks that you need to look at different models for experience, not just the model of somebody who's been a legislative aide and then a city council member and a state legislator and a member of Congress, but also people who have life experience going out, doing fundamental, transformational things in our politics and our society. And I think they could come from a lot of different areas. It's unfortunate that when we finally opened up the process, we ended up with Donald Trump, right? Because I can name you 100 people who, if we opened up the process, would be better than 1,000 million people would be better than Donald Trump. And I'd probably start with Santita Jackson.
No. You wouldn't do that to me. I thought you loved me.
I would start with you, but I wouldn't. Again, as I said before to the caller, don't make people run for things that they're not planning to run for.
Well, you know what? We do need to open up our thinking and give space for people who have been homeless, who have been broke, who've had trouble with their bills, who've had trouble in their personal lives. You know what? Don't ask someone to be more perfect than you're going to try to be. If people want to serve you,
exactly right.
That ought to be enough. Okay. That's why I take people's personal lives and all their stuff. Stacey Abrams said, "Look, I've been broke." Good. Then you know what? I really want you to run. I want someone who's been broke. Corey Bush.
Exactly right. Stacey Abrams. Yes. I remember when Stacey Abrams
I got
was running
20 seconds.
And they said, "Oh, she's got." Well, I'll do it very quick. They said, "Oh, she's got some debt, right? Maybe she shouldn't be considered." I thought the opposite. No, if she's got some debt, she's like all of us. She's one of us.
And she'll empathize. And that's really the key, everybody. Right. I want somebody who's just as so-called flawed as they can be. Please. That's what we need. That is what we need. So I guess I could be good. I love you, everybody. I love you, John Nichols.
Let's start that campaign. Take care,
no.
I've got to take off.
Kidding. I love you. Everybody have a good day. I'll see you on the Santita Jackson Show. Did Dwight go, Coach May? Am I by myself now?
It's Dwight and Attorney Patillo.
Oh, well, you know what? Let me speak with them very quickly. Robert Patillo and Dwight McKee, do you all have any other thoughts?
Well, I'm looking at the fact that right now Joe Biden is now saying he's not going to continue the moratorium on student loan repayments.
Oh, yeah.
And at the same time, we're talking about a almost $800 billion military spending bill. All of a sudden, you're going to wreck the lives of many first-generation college graduates, millennials who are now in the workforce. It's funny. For some reason, when people hear the word millennial, they still think about, a kid kid with headphones on, sitting in the back of their mom's SUV, sipping a Capri Sun, coming back from soccer practice. Millennials are 40 now. Millennials have mortgages and kids and families, and we refuse to, if not eliminate student loan debt, continue the moratorium on repayment until we at least get the economy back on firm footing. You're going to see all hell break loose when all of a sudden, in the beginning of February, people start getting $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 taken out of their paychecks per month to pay back student loans for the degrees y'all told us to go get. And Joe Biden to have the nerve to do that at the same time as increasing military spending for another bomber, for another aircraft carrier, for another tank that are already obsolete before the day they roll off the assembly line. I think you're going to, if you thought young people were mad already, good luck in 2022 if this is your course of action.
Dwight, your thoughts? I mean, hold on one second. Dwight, Robert, did you see Secretary Cardona on Charlemagne the God show? I mean,
I'm not a Charlemagne fan for many reasons. So
no.
I also don't like the fact.
Just hold on. It just came up on my timeline because the establishment are put on his show because it's an iHeart show. It's all of that. And I'm only bringing that up to say that he is the guy who the establishment has set up to talk to young Black America and for them, right? And so he was pressing him on student loans and student loan forgiveness and why the Biden administration has not come through. That's why I was asking.
Oh, yeah, I find it interesting that the Democratic Party has decided that rappers and entertainers and athletes should be the mouthpiece by which they speak to young people instead of policy experts. And I would love to get a Biden administration official on my radio show to talk about these things, but they rather talk to Cardi B. We saw Joe Biden sit down with her. They'll rather talk to Charlemagne the God. But then if any of those rappers or athletes step off of the plantation, they don't say what they want them to say, all of a sudden treat you like they treated Nicki Minaj. We're talking about her cousin's friends' balls swelling up after taking the vaccine, or they'll treat you like they treat Kyrie. Shut up and dribble. We told you what you're supposed to say. Who never told you to do no thinking. You're just over there to look pretty and do what we told you to do. So I think it's very much one of the problems of this administration and the way they view African Americans, that they think Charlemagne the God is a better resource to reach Black people than the Santita Jackson show or the Keep Hope Alive show or any of these other Black radio hosts around the country who can proceed with an actual intelligent conversation and ask hard questions.
Dwight?
Touche. Boy, Robert said it all. It's it really is an insult how they approach us and it's exactly what he says, is that as long as they keep the party line and repeat the narrative, then they prop up any kind of rap guy or any kind of athlete that they can. Once they become an independent thinker, have an independent decision, then they beat them down like they stole something. It's the irony. And if you are not really strategic in your thinking, and if you really don't spend a lot of your own time in your personal research, you'll fall prey to that event. You will think that these people like Charlemagne are independent thinkers who come to their own conclusions, as opposed to they are speaking because they dress a certain way or look a certain way. You would think they're revolutionary in their thinking, and many of them are not. They're status quo, and they're pumped up by the status quo. I'm with Robert on that.
I hear you.
And this last point, because I have to throw something nerdy in there.
Oh, no.
So Charlemagne names himself after Charles the Great, Charlemagne of the Carolingian Empire, the progenitor of the Carolingians. So Charlemagne's father was Pippin, Pippin's father was Charles Martel, also known as Charles the Hammer, the mayor of London during the Umayyad Caliphate's conquest of Cordoba and into Spain. So there was the Battle of Tours, where Tariq the Moor really had a chance to take all of Europe, and he was defeated at the Battle of Tours. So if not for Charlemagne's grandfather, you would have had a African-dominated Europe for the entirety of the Middle Ages, and probably a completely different outlook on world history. There probably would have never been a transatlantic slave trade. There never would have been European colonization, if not for the Battle of Tours. So the fact you have a black dude who names himself after Charles the Hammer's grandson is a level of lack of knowledge that is not. It'd be like seeing a Jewish guy calling himself Little Hitler. And it wouldn't fly with any other group. But this is who we decide to put forward as the voice of young black America. It doesn't make no sense to me.
No, it makes perfect sense to me. That's how you uphold the system, right? This is
It's absolutely so.
This is logical. That's one of the things I love about mathematics. Everybody, I was recruited to University to study math, and I'm a musician, which means I do oral math. I mean, things plug in, they make sense. The equal sign does not lie. Now, you might have messed up as you were inputting all these variables, but trust and believe, the equal sign does not lie. Whatever you put in this equation, this is what you're going to get. And this is the system as it is presently constructed. Power protects itself, Dwight and Robert. And this is, you don't, as you were, the point that you were making, all these folks who we see, not just in media, but in politics, all this stuff, it's an insider's game. It's an insider's game. And it's when you start digging into people's backgrounds that you see just how much of an insider game it is. And I know that because we've always been outsiders. Don't let fame and, and Reverend 60 plus years of service fool you that we're not insiders. Dwight and Robert. Dwight, you know that.
I just want to add to the good Reverend Robert's analysis, and the Carolinians, that's who Carolina was named after, which is where they ended up taking the first slaves, right off Virginia and Carolina. That's the irony of it all. And so the North Carolina and the South Carolina that your daddy grew up in, Santita, is part of the legacy of the Carolinian dynasty that the first slaves was brought into.
Dwight, let me tell you, and Robert, because Robert brought me on to his show and he's talked about all the stories I've got. I've got plenty, and I just have to write them down because they have been wonderful. I was in the middle of finals at Howard when I was a freshman, and my father's office called. Your dad he's in town. He wants you to come down to the Hill. I was like, oh, okay, all right. Well, I just finished an exam, so I had a little bit of space. And so he sent one of his staff members over to get me. And so we went up to the Hill, and it was a Senate hearing I think it was on voting rights. And he was going to testify. But, whenever my father, he was in town just about every week, he always wanted us to be with him. Even if we were just sitting there, he wanted us to be with him so we could see each other. But what was interesting was this particular day, Jesse, the senator from South Carolina, goodness gracious, Strom Thurmond, who my father could do a dead-on imitation of, was there. So as they closed out the hearing, my father said, he said, this is Senator Thurmond. I was like, oh, I know who Senator Thurmond is. He said, I know you know, and I want you to meet him. And honey, I met him, and he was like, oh, we're a pretty girl. And my father said, and she's a freshman at Howard. She just finished her freshman year. He said, oh, Howard, great neighbor school. Let me tell you. I said, oh, I can't wait to get back up to Howard and tell Dr. Cheek, who was the president, and this man called this the great neighbor school. Yes. Come on, you guys. You need to know what's up. Dwight and Robert. It's too rich. You can't make this stuff up. It is an insider's game. And we need to be clear. We need to be clear on our agenda, Dwight and Robert. I just think we just have to get very, very clear on that and stop being sentimental And Robert, you're always doing these mic drops on Stacey Abrams. Shame on you. But you want us to, I guess, have a clear-eyed view of who everybody is. Is that it?
Yeah, because I was that person back in 2007 who never got wrapped up in the romanticism of Obama-ness. I was always very critical in telling people that don't keep inserting the person you imagined. Listen to what he's saying he's going to do, and he's going to do exactly what he said. Quit imagining this person being there that isn't there. I had the same view of Biden, that Biden was always going to be the status quo figure, and don't expect him to suddenly change his stripes by being in office. I have the same view of Abrams and Kamala also. That they tell, just like Maya Angelou said, somebody who tells you who they are, believe them the first time. We have to stop expecting this magic to happen in politics where suddenly everybody will get into office and then turn into Bernie Sanders. If you want Bernie Sanders in office, vote for Bernie Sanders. Don't vote for somebody else and hope for them to turn into them.
I mean, and Bernie Sanders doesn't look the way you want him to look, the way you want your candidate to look. He doesn't sound the way you want him to sound, but he's the guy who was sent for you. How about that? I'm so tired of people with that foolishness. I'm like, sweetie, I know this might not be who you wanted, but this is the one who was sent for you. It's so, come on.
It's just like dating. You can either, if you meet a nice guy who has the personality you want, but he's a little too short, you can either take the personality or wait for the tall guy. But don't expect the tall guy to show the short guy's personality, and that's how we vote in this country.
Oh, more than that, character. My mama told me, love who loves you. You figure that out. Don't you love him? She said, you love who loves you. And when you do that, she said, you're going to have enough challenges, but you will be with a man who made up his mind that you were the one for him. The Bible says that. I didn't come up with that. My mother just reminded me. He was like, hey, and my father will tell you today, they met 60 years ago. And he says, oh no, the day I met her, I told her I was going to marry her. And he loves telling the story, and he will tell it. He will tell you if you ask him. And he saw her walking across campus, and he was with his fraternity brothers and the guys who played football, the big men on campus. And they were rating the women, yes, okay, as they walked across, you're 10, 8, 9. My mother was quite the looker, and they said, ooh, and she tripped in some mud and was furious. She said, oh, these guys, and guess what? She tripped in some mud. She couldn't stand them, and they were married a little more than a year later. They said, girl, don't worry about it. I'm going to marry you. I'm going to marry you. And that's what he did do. Y'all better.
That was your daddy's story. Your mama got her own story.
Of course she has her own story. But guess what? Guess who didn't propose to him? She didn't. He proposed to her. Okay, which is my point, because she's got her own story. Because my mother there's no one stronger in the world. You know that. Dwight, you know that. She is everyone who meets my mother. But men like him don't want a weak person. Y'all.
But what I love about your mother, she also told him, said, if you're going to marry me, you got to get on that picket line.
Absolutely.
And you got to fight for freedom. Because I'm only marrying a freedom fighter.
How about that?
That's what I love about your mama.
How about that? And he helped her and she helped him. He had to figure out how to help her to write about why Red China should be admitted to the United Nations and all of that. Oh, yeah. She helped to bring him along. Because my mother's the daughter of migrant workers. South Florida, 60, 70 years ago, was, please, it was barely incorporated into the United States of America. Barely, barely, barely. Would you not agree with that, Dwight? It was just, this is pre-Disney World and Disneyland, Disney World. That is, Florida was, it was not,
It was glorified Cuba.
It was glorified, absolutely. And you went and you hopped on a boat like my grandmother would do, and you went from island to island seasonally so you could work. So my mother spent time in pre-Castro Cuba at 3 and 4 and 5 and younger, because that's where my grandmother would have to work. You went and you picked beans and you chopped sugar cane and all of that. That is what my grandmother did. And as an American, but that's how you worked. And then you came back and you lived in, and you lived in these communities with, Ashkenazi Jews and indigenous people, because black people ran into Florida to hide with Osceola Indians and indigenous people and all of that. So that's my mother grew up in the Florida of Zora Neale Hurston. And in fact, Zora Neale Hurston, Dwight and Robert taught at my grandmother's grammar school. She was one of the teachers at her school.
Finally made a song about it. Said, "Come tally these bananas. Come, daylight's coming, and I want to go home." That's what that song is about.
I want to go.
Daylight's coming, and I want to go home.
I want to go home. Dale, daylight coming. Me want to go home. Me want to go home, but you can't. You can't go home. You can't go home because you are virtual slaves, and that's how my grandmother has her own story about Castro. She said you can say what you will about him, but when I was in Cuba, she said I was little more than a slave. Black people were little more than slaves there. It was dark skinned. It looked like she was from the west coast of Africa, unlike my father's people. But that having been said, so those were, so even what she looked like obviously defined her life options. And, we all understand that. So everybody, let's wake up. That's all I'm just trying to say, Dwight, Robert. So what is this governor's race looking like, Robert? And we're still on Facebook. I just want to.
Yeah, it's going to depend on a couple things. One, Stacey Abrams has got it into the race. I don't want people to think that just means it's a shoe-in for her. It is still the state of Georgia. The reason Brian Kemp pushed through this voter suppression law was for this exact reason, to win. The bigger question is going to be who gets out of the Republican primary. Brian Kemp is the incumbent. He does not have the support of the MAGAs, and that's going to be very difficult to overcome if the field starts getting crowded. Vernon Jones does not have the money or the juice or the charisma, and most importantly, does not have the Trump backing that he thought he was going to have to be a viable opponent to Brian Kemp. David Perdue, the former senator, is a billionaire. Has the Trump support, has the establishment support needed to win. So if David Perdue, for example, ends up being the Republican nominee, Stacey Abrams got a hell of a race on her hands. One, because he's been out of public office for the last few years. There's only so many magazine covers you can be on before it starts taking away from you. Well, maybe you should be in South Georgia campaigning instead of on every award show around the country. That's kind of the way people see things down here. That's very much what did in Keisha Lance Bottoms as the mayor of Atlanta. She got a little bit too into the black girl magic thing and forgot that people are getting robbed in Buckhead every day, and only so many magazine covers people want to see you on while the city's going to hell in a handbasket. So Stacey Abrams is going to have to overcome that. Also, she's going to have to overcome very much the Democratic primary field, because this is not even a shoe-in that she gets the nomination. There are a lot of people on the state level who are bandying about the idea of primary challenges, and it only takes one to catch fire, particularly in the outside of Metro Atlanta area, in order to sway the race. So it's a very wide open race right now. You have the brand names, the quarter horses, if you will, but we are a long way off even from the primaries, let alone from the general election next fall. So it's going to be an interesting race to watch. It's very much dependent on what happens in national politics.
Dwight, your thoughts? I mean, I know you're far away, but.
No, he summed it up. I think he's absolutely correct. And I think the other variable in that is you don't have all of the momentum built around trying to take the Senate back in Biden's behalf. And so when you take that out of the equation, it's going to be a totally different race. It's not going to be the kind of national race it was before to secure the Democratic Party. It's going to be much more a race about local politics and individual relationships.
All right. Well, I think but I think that's what's happening with politics all the way around, right? That's why we have these surprises. If you do not catch fire on the ground, I was trying to explain to someone, if you do not catch fire on the ground, you can forget about it. You have got to, people in the streets have to like you. You just can't just focus on the sweets. It's the streets that'll keep you alive. How about that? Whew. I love you guys. You have no idea how much I enjoyed being with you. And when I was able to get you and Dwight and Robert on today, I said, "Oh, this is going to be fun. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it." And I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. So I'm going to let everybody go. It's been wonderful. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. We're going to really, Robert, I hope that you will come back. Dwight, hope you'll stick your head in too. I want to talk about what's happened with these Amazon workers and these factory workers who were not allowed to go home and who died in the factories down in Kentucky and in southern Illinois, downstate Illinois. This Amazon worker texted his girlfriend, "Amazon won't let me go home." And he died right there in that fulfillment center of Amazon. Shame, shame, shame. Shame, 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 shame. And there was no basement. No basement. In Tornado Alley? Are you serious? So I love you, everybody. Thank you, Dwight. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Cosme, for a great show. Everybody give Cosme some love. He does such wonderful work for this show. And he is wrapping up his semester in school, and he has done very well, extremely well. He's gotten all A's. We're so proud of him. Sending you much love, Cosme. I know your parents are your family, your whole family have got to be so proud of you. And you are a fine young gentleman. And so this is exciting. I love you, everybody. See you tomorrow, God willing. Bye-bye.